Memorial Day, a time for reflection, honor, and gratitude. A day when Americans pause to remember the sacrifices made by those who served. But on this particular Memorial Day, something remarkable unfolded on the streets of Washington, D.C. In the middle of a busy street, amidst the heat of the midday sun, a lone Marine stood unwavering. His uniform, crisp and decorated with medals, bore silent testimony to years of dedication and service. His face was solemn, his posture rigid, and his right hand remained raised in an unbroken salute. For 3 long hours, he stood as a sentinel of remembrance, his eyes locked forward, his mind lost in memories. At first, the crowd moved past him, some pausing briefly to take in the sight. But as the minutes turned into an hour, people began to stop. Whispers spread. Who was this Marine? Why was he standing there, seemingly oblivious to the pain in his muscles, the heat pressing down on him? His uniform clung to his body, soaked with sweat, yet his expression did not waver. It was an act of discipline, of unwavering devotion, of remembrance. Some onlookers wiped tears from their eyes. Others stood beside him, watching in silent respect. And then, the moment took an unexpected turn. A low rumble in the distance. Faint at first, but growing louder with each passing second. A deep, guttural growl, like a storm rolling in. People turned their heads toward the horizon. The sound was unmistakable now, a chorus of motorcycles approaching in force. A wave of concern rippled through the crowd. Murmurs of uncertainty passed between them. Who were these bikers? Were they here to disrupt this solemn moment? The roar of the engines grew deafening. Some in the crowd shifted uneasily. The reputation of biker groups was well known: rebels, outsiders, troublemakers. What were they doing here, in the middle of this moment of quiet honor? Then they arrived. A long line of motorcycles, gleaming under the sun, came to a slow, deliberate stop. One by one, their riders dismounted, leather-clad figures with weathered faces and strong, silent expressions. The crowd braced itself, and then something incredible happened. Without a word, the bikers turned toward the lone Marine. One by one, they lifted their right hands in salute. The energy in the air shifted. It was no longer a moment of uncertainty. It was a moment of unity, a moment of unexpected brotherhood, the kind that defies expectations and leaves an entire nation speechless. This is a story of sacrifice, of honor, and of an unbreakable bond between those who serve. It's a reminder that respect comes in many forms, and that true brotherhood knows no boundaries. Watch until the end, and I promise, you'll never see things quite the same way again. And before we go any further, let me ask you, have you ever misjudged someone based on appearances? Have you ever assumed the worst, only to be proven wrong? Let me know in the comments below. And if you believe in honoring those who have given everything for this country, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be told, remembered, and passed on. On Memorial Day, as thousands gathered in the nation's capital to pay tribute to those who had served, one man stood alone amidst the sea of people. Sergeant Tim Chambers, a Marine veteran, took his position in the center of the road, unwavering. His uniform, adorned with medals of honor and patches of sacrifice, told the story of his years of service without a single word being spoken. His injured leg pulsed with pain beneath him, a constant reminder of the battles he had endured. But he did not move. Instead, he stood firm, his feet planted, his back straight, his right hand raised in a salute that spoke of duty, of loyalty, of loss. Minutes passed, stretching into an hour. The midday sun bore down on him, unyielding. Sweat trickled down his face, but he remained motionless. The ache in his arm grew unbearable. His muscles screamed for relief, yet he never wavered. This moment, this act, was bigger than pain. It was bigger than him. It was about honor, about remembrance. As Tim stood there, his mind drifted. The streets of Washington, D.C. faded away, replaced by the unforgiving heat of a distant desert. The rhythmic hum of motorcycles in the distance gave way to the sharp, deafening cracks of gunfire. The scent of leather and exhaust was replaced by the acrid stench of burning metal and the iron scent of blood. And there, in the chaos of war, was Mark. Mark had always been more than just a twin brother. He had been Tim's shadow, his partner in crime growing up, his closest confidant. They had shared everything, the same childhood dreams, the same love for adventure, the same unwavering desire to serve their country. They had enlisted together, trained together, survived together. But fate had been cruel. The ambush had been sudden, brutal. The air had been thick with dust and smoke, visibility near impossible. Orders had been drowned out by the sound of rapid gunfire. Chaos reigned, and in the middle of it, Tim felt the searing pain in his leg as the sniper's bullet tore through muscle and bone. He collapsed, his weapon slipping from his grasp. He tried to crawl to cover, but before he could move another inch, he felt strong hands gripping his vest. Mark! There was no hesitation, no second thought. Mark had always been the reckless one, always willing to put others before himself. Shielding Tim with his own body, he dragged him toward safety. But in doing so, he exposed himself. And in that fleeting moment, a single shot rang out. Mark's body jerked violently before slumping over Tim. A moment frozen in time. The warmth of his brother's blood pooling onto his uniform. The weight of his body pressed against him. Tim's screams for help. The helplessness. The heartbreak. The memory played on an endless loop in his mind, etched into the deepest recesses of his soul. He had replayed that moment thousands of times, wondering if he could have done something, anything, to change the outcome. But war is merciless, and it had taken the one person he loved most in the world. Now, years later, Tim stood in silent tribute, not just for Mark, but for every fallen soldier who had made the ultimate sacrifice. His salute was a vow, to never forget, to always honor, to always remember. He had survived, but survival had come at a cost. And today, in the heart of the nation's capital, in the presence of thousands, he stood in their memory, his body aching, his soul heavy, but his resolve unbreakable. The hours stretched on, and the crowd remained, their eyes fixed on the lone Marine standing in silent tribute. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Some wiped away silent tears, others pressed their hands over their hearts in quiet reverence. A few whispered prayers, their voices barely audible over the hush that had settled over the gathering. Then, a sound began to break through the stillness. At first, it was distant, just a faint growl on the horizon, a low, rolling thunder that seemed to vibrate through the air. Some turned their heads, trying to pinpoint the source. The rumble grew louder, stronger, until it became impossible to ignore. And then they appeared. A line of motorcycles stretched across the road, their chrome glinting under the sunlight, their leather-clad riders forming an unbroken wave of movement as they approached. The crowd tensed, shifting uneasily. Bikers carried a reputation. Rough, untamed, and unpredictable. They were often seen as outlaws, men who lived by their own rules, who rode through towns leaving only the echo of their roaring engines in their wake. They weren't the kind of men people expected to see in a place like this. A murmur spread through the onlookers. Some exchanged wary glances. Others took a step back, uncertain of what was about to unfold. The air crackled with tension. The motorcycles slowed as they reached the Marine, their engines growling before finally settling into silence. A deep, heavy quiet fell over the street, broken only by the distant flapping of American flags lining the sidewalks. The bikers dismounted, their boots striking the pavement in unison. Not a single word was spoken. One by one, they walked forward, their faces solemn, their movements deliberate. They stepped up beside the Marine, forming a line on either side of him. Then, in perfect unison, as if they had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, they raised their right hands. A salute. The crowd watched, stunned into silence. Whatever preconceived notions they had held about these men vanished in an instant. There was no defiance in their eyes, no rebellion in their stance. Only respect. Deep, unwavering respect. It was a brotherhood beyond words, a bond that transcended background, lifestyle, or reputation. The feared and the revered standing shoulder to shoulder, bound by something greater than themselves. For the first time in a long time, the world saw these men for who they truly were. Not outlaws, Not troublemakers, but warriors of a different kind. Men who understood sacrifice. Men who understood loyalty. Men who knew, perhaps better than most, what it meant to lose a brother. The silence hung thick in the air. The weight of the moment pressed upon the crowd, their expressions frozen in disbelief. No one had expected this. The bikers had not come to disturb, nor had they come with ill intentions. They had come to stand in honor. One of them stepped forward, a man whose very presence demanded attention. He was built like a fortress, his arms covered in tattoos that told stories of battles fought, of memories etched into his skin. His eyes were steady, unwavering, filled with a quiet strength that needed no words. The crowd held its breath as he reached into his pocket. A ripple of uncertainty passed through them. Some exchanged glances, their bodies stiffening in anticipation. Was this where things took a dark turn? Was this the moment when an act of respect was interrupted by something unthinkable? Gasps echoed as his hand emerged. The tension, thick enough to cut with a knife, dissolved in an instant. He wasn't holding a weapon. He wasn't reaching for anything menacing. He was holding a simple bottle of water. With reverence, he twisted the cap open and stepped forward, his movements deliberate and measured. He lifted the bottle to Tim's lips, offering it without a word. The Marine took a long sip, his body grateful for the relief. Yet his posture never wavered. His salute remained unbroken, a single act of kindness. Simple, yet profound. The power of it rippled through the crowd, stripping away any remaining misconceptions. Then another biker stepped forward. In his hand, he held a small pocket fan. Without hesitation, he positioned himself beside Tim and began to wave it gently, offering a cool breeze to combat the relentless sun. He didn't seek recognition. He didn't need thanks. He simply did what needed to be done. Moments later, another figure emerged from the group. This one carried an umbrella, his purpose clear as he moved to shield Tim from the punishing heat. The Marine didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge the efforts with words, but deep inside, he felt the unspoken bond growing around him. They weren't here as outlaws. They weren't here as rebels. They were here as brothers, as fellow warriors who understood what it meant to stand firm in the face of sacrifice. Many among them were veterans themselves, or the children of those who had served. They knew the weight of the uniform, the burden of memories that never fade. And in that moment, every preconceived notion about them dissolved. The rugged appearances, the roaring engines, the reputation that preceded them, all of it faded beneath the truth of who they really were. Respect was not just spoken, it was demonstrated. Brotherhood was not just a word, it was lived. The crowd saw it now. The bikers had come not as spectators, not as intruders, but as guardians of a sacred moment. They had come to stand beside a man who stood for something greater than himself. And they had done so not with loud proclamations, not with force, but with the quiet, unwavering strength that only true warriors possess. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows over the quieted crowd. The day had been long, the air thick with heat and emotion. Tim's body ached, his muscles trembling from exhaustion, but still, he held his salute firm. Every fiber of his being screamed for relief, but he would not lower his arm until the moment was right. This tribute, this promise, was greater than his own pain. Then, as the sky softened into hues of orange and violet, he let out a slow breath and, with the same deliberate reverence he had held for hours, he lowered his arm. The silence that followed felt almost sacred. The crowd, once murmuring with anticipation, now stood in awe, as if unsure whether to breathe, afraid to break the moment. One by one, the bikers, who had stood in silent unity with him, lowered their salutes as well. The weight of their respect, their solidarity, was unmistakable. They had not spoken much, yet they had said everything. No words could have carried the depth of what had transpired in those solemn hours. Slowly, they stepped forward, their boots scuffing against the pavement as they approached him. Their eyes met his, some glistening with unshed tears, others with the quiet understanding of those who knew sacrifice firsthand. Each man clasped his hand, offering a firm grip, a nod of respect. It was a bond unspoken, a brotherhood that required no explanation. Tim turned to the gathered crowd, his throat tight with emotion. He took a deep breath, steadying himself before he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "Today," he began, pausing for a moment, letting his gaze travel across the faces before him, "I have witnessed something incredible. We live in a world where people are too often judged before they are understood. But today, these men, these bikers, have shown us what true honor looks like." His words settled over the crowd like a warm embrace, touching something deep within each person present. Then, as if a dam had broken, the audience erupted in applause. It was not just for Tim. It was for all of them, for the fallen soldiers, for the silent tributes, for the unity that had emerged in an unexpected place. The bikers, their faces lined with quiet pride, turned back to their motorcycles. The engines roared to life, a deep, rolling thunder that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath them. One by one, they mounted their bikes, their presence as striking in departure as it had been in arrival. As they disappeared into the horizon, the echoes of their engines faded, leaving behind only the hush of the wind and the lingering memory of what had just transpired. It was a moment that would not be forgotten, a story that would be told again and again. Tim stood there, watching until the last rider was out of sight. His body may have been weary, but his heart was full. He had come to honor the fallen, to pay tribute to his brother, and in return, he had been gifted with something unexpected, a reminder that honor, respect, and brotherhood could be found in the most unlikely of places. Tim stood alone once more, but he was no longer just a lone Marine. He was a symbol, a testament to resilience, unity, and the unbreakable bond between those who serve. The weight of the moment still lingered in the air, not just for him, but for everyone who had witnessed it. It was more than a tribute. It was a lesson, a reminder of the power of brotherhood and respect. This story teaches us something profound. Never judge a book by its cover. True honor comes in many forms, often from those we least expect. A group of bikers, once seen as outsiders, proved that respect and kindness transcend appearances. They showed that real strength isn't just about standing tall, but about standing together. Now, I ask you, have you ever misjudged someone, only to be proven wrong? Have you witnessed an act of unexpected kindness that changed your perspective? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. And if this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Let others see the power of unity, of compassion, of unwavering respect. Subscribe for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the goodness in humanity. Until next time, stay kind, stay open-minded, and always remember those who have sacrificed for our freedom.